My family always believed that success could be measured in zeros on a paycheck and names embossed on gilded business cards. They never understood that real power lives somewhere else entirely, somewhere they would never think to look. Tonight, as I sat at their perfectly set dinner table in McLean, Virginia, listening to them celebrate everything I was not, I held their entire world in the palm of my hand. And they had no idea. The crystal chandelier cast elegant shadows across the dining room of the Morrison estate, a sprawling mansion that screamed old money and new ambition. My father, Robert Morrison, sat at the head of the table like a king surveying his kingdom. My mother, Eleanor, fluttered around, ensuring every detail was perfect. And my brother, Michael, the golden child, basked in the attention that had always been reserved for him. I was the family disappointment. Sarah Morrison, the girl who had broken ranks and joined the military, instead of following the ordained path into corporate America. Except they did not call me Sarah anymore, because I had legally changed my name 5 years ago. I was Colonel Athena Thorne now, but they refused to acknowledge it. To them, I would always be their wayward daughter who had wasted her potential playing soldier. The dinner had been called to celebrate Michael's latest promotion to executive vice president at Anderson Global, the massive defense contractor where both he and my father held senior positions. The irony was so thick I could taste it, more bitter than the overpriced wine my mother kept refilling in crystal glasses. Michael raised his glass, his face flushed with self-satisfaction and expensive scotch. "Dad, thank you for paving the way for me at Anderson. This promotion is really a testament to the Morrison legacy. The right kind of legacy, not some misguided sense of patriotic duty." His eyes flicked to me when he said that last part, a deliberate jab that landed exactly where he intended. My father laughed, the sound booming across the table. "That is my boy. This is what the Morrison name should represent. Success, influence, real power in the business world. Not this playing soldier nonsense." My mother set down her fork with practiced delicacy and turned her pitying gaze toward me. Poor Athena, still doing those little tasks in the military. "Honey, when are you going to find a real career? And more importantly, when are you going to find a decent man and settle down? You are not getting any younger." I took a sip of water, keeping my face carefully neutral. They had been having this same conversation for years, and I had long ago stopped trying to defend myself. They did not want to hear about my work, about the real impact I made, about the lives I saved and the threats I neutralized. To them, if it did not come with a corner office and a stock option package, it was worthless. Michael was not finished. He leaned back in his chair with that smug expression I had hated since we were children. "You know, Sarah, maybe you should come work at Anderson. I could probably get you a position as an administrative assistant or something. At least you would have a real salary and a future. The military is not going to take care of you forever." The condescension in his voice was so thick it was almost impressive. Administrative assistant, for someone with my background, my clearances, my expertise. It would have been laughable if it was not so perfectly representative of how little they understood about who I had become. My father nodded enthusiastically, as if Michael had just proposed the most brilliant solution to a chronic problem. "That is actually a good idea. We have been talking about this for years, Sarah. You need to stop this military phase and join the real world. Anderson is expanding their operations. Michael could find a place for you. Nothing too challenging, of course, but steady work." Nothing too challenging. I let those words sink in, adding them to the mountain of dismissals and diminishments I had collected over the years. They thought I needed their charity, their connections, their scraps from the table where they feasted on accomplishments they believed were the only ones that mattered. Eleanor jumped in, her voice taking on that saccharine quality she used when she thought she was being helpful. "And once you have a stable corporate job, dear, you will have time to focus on finding a husband. Your biological clock is ticking. I want grandchildren before I am too old to enjoy them. From you, I mean. Michael has plenty of time." I looked around the table at these 3 people who shared my DNA but understood nothing about me. My father, with his sense of entitlement and his belief that money was the only measure of worth. My mother with her 1,950 seconds mindset trapped in a modern world. My brother with his inflated ego built on a foundation of nepotism and mediocrity. They did not know. None of them knew that I was not just some low-level officer pushing papers at a forgotten desk. They did not know that I was Colonel Athena Thorne, commander of the Cyber Warfare Operations Command at the United States Air Force. They did not know that I held clearances so high that just knowing they existed was classified. They did not know that in my hands rested the fate of Anderson Global, the very company they served so proudly. Most importantly, they did not know that tomorrow morning, I would walk into Anderson Global's headquarters and bring their entire world crashing down around them. I set down my napkin with deliberate precision, the soft sound somehow cutting through their chatter. I stood up, straightening to my full height, and looked at each of them in turn. My voice, when I spoke, was calm and measured. With an undercurrent of steel they were too obtuse to recognize. "I am sorry, but I have an important meeting early tomorrow morning. The kind of meeting that none of you would be qualified to attend." My father's face reddened. "Qualified? Young lady, I have been in the defense industry for 30 years. I smiled, but it was not a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who knew exactly how the next 24 hours would unfold. Yes, Dad. I know exactly how long you have been at Anderson Global. I know everything about your position there. Everything. I picked up my purse and walked toward the door, their shocked silence following me like a wake. My mother recovered first, her voice pitching higher with indignation. Athena, you cannot just leave like this. We are your family. I paused at the doorway and looked back one last time. Family respects each other. Family values each other's contributions. Family does not spend years making one member feel worthless because she chose a different path. Tomorrow, you will all understand exactly what path I chose. Sleep well. The drive back to my penthouse in Washington, D.C. was peaceful. The Potomac River glittered in the darkness as I crossed the Key Bridge, the monuments lit up against the night sky. This was my city now, the heart of American power, and I moved through it with an authority my family could not begin to comprehend. I pulled into the secured parking garage of my building, a luxury high-rise that offered views of the river and the Capitol beyond. My neighbors were senators, lobbyists, senior military officers, and diplomats, people who understood real power, not just the illusion of it. Inside my apartment, I shed the civilian clothes I had worn to dinner and stood before my closet. My dress uniform hung there, crisp and perfect, the silver eagles on the shoulders catching the light. Beside it were my ribbons and medals, each one representing missions I could never discuss, threats I had neutralized, lives I had saved. I picked up my secure phone and dialed a number I knew by heart. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Colonel Thorne. I assumed dinner with the family went as expected. General Douglas Vance, my commanding officer and mentor, knew the situation well. We had been planning Operation Iron Hands for 3 months, ever since my team had uncovered the massive security vulnerabilities in Anderson Global systems, the same systems that handled classified government contracts and sensitive defense data. It went exactly as expected, General. They have no idea what is coming. I will be ready at 0900 hours tomorrow. His voice carried a note of satisfaction. Outstanding. Anderson Global's board of directors is already nervous. When they see what we have uncovered, and when they realize who uncovered it, well, let us just say it will be an education for everyone involved. After we hung up, I stood at my floor-to-ceiling windows and looked out at the city. Somewhere out there, my family was probably still sitting around that dinner table, discussing my rudeness, my poor life choices, my continued failure to live up to their expectations. Let them talk. Let them enjoy this last night of their comfortable ignorance. I thought back to the beginning, to the day I had decided to join the Air Force over my family's vociferous objections. I had been 18, fresh out of high school, with stellar grades and acceptance letters from every prestigious university my parents had pressured me to apply to. They had my entire life mapped out: business school, followed by an entry-level position at Anderson Global, followed by a strategic marriage to someone from another powerful family. But I had looked at that future and seen nothing but a lifetime of being Robert Morrison's daughter, Michael Morrison's little sister, defined entirely by relationships to men who would always be considered more important than I was. So I had gone to an Air Force recruiter instead, and my family had been furious. They had threatened to disown me. They had called me ungrateful, stupid, short-sighted. My mother had cried. My father had raged. Michael had laughed and told me I would come crawling back within a year. But I had not crawled back. I had thrived. I had discovered that I had a gift for computer science and cybersecurity. I had risen through the ranks faster than almost anyone in the history of the cyber division. I had led operations that prevented terrorist attacks, shut down enemy intelligence networks, and protected critical infrastructure from hostile nations. And 5 years ago, when I made colonel at 35 years old, I had legally changed my name. Sarah Morrison became Athena Thorne. A new identity for a new life, one where I was not defined by my father's shadow or my brother's smug superiority. Athena, the goddess of wisdom and strategic warfare. Thorne, a reminder that I was no longer soft or easily hurt. My family had never even noticed the name change. They did not follow my career closely enough to see my name on any official documents or commendations. They just kept calling me Sarah, kept dismissing my achievements, kept waiting for me to give up and come home. The next morning, I woke at 0500 hours as I always did. I went through my exercise routine, showered, and dressed in my uniform with meticulous care. Every ribbon had to be perfectly aligned, every crease razor sharp. Today was not just another day. Today was vindication. Amanda Chen, my second-in-command and closest friend in the service, picked me up at 0730. She was driving the unmarked government vehicle we would take to Anderson Global's headquarters in Reston, Virginia. General Vance would meet us there. Amanda looked over at me as we drove through the early morning traffic. "You ready for this, Colonel?" I smiled. I have been ready for this my entire life. Anderson Global's headquarters was an imposing glass and steel structure that dominated the Reston skyline. It was designed to impress, to intimidate, to announce that this was a place of serious money and serious power. My father and brother loved to brag about working there, loved to drop the company name at social gatherings and watch people react with suitable awe. We pulled into the visitor parking area at exactly 08:45. General Vance was already there, emerging from his own vehicle with 2 junior officers carrying equipment cases. He cut an impressive figure in his uniform, 4 stars gleaming on his shoulders, his bearing radiating decades of command experience. "Colonel Thorne," he greeted me formally, shaking my hand. "Are we all set?" "Yes, sir. Everything is in place." We walked through the main entrance together, our uniforms drawing stares from the corporate employees streaming into work. The security guard at the front desk straightened immediately when he saw the general's stars. "General Vance, sir. How can I help you today? We have a meeting with your board of directors. They are expecting us in the main conference room." The guard made a quick call, then directed us toward the elevators. As we rode up to the executive floor, I felt a strange calm settle over me. This was just another operation, I told myself. Just another mission where I had to deliver difficult truths to people who did not want to hear them. Except this time, those people included my father and brother. The executive conference room was everything I expected. Massive mahogany table, leather chairs, wall-to-wall windows overlooking the Virginia suburbs. The board of directors was already assembled, about 15 men and women in expensive suits, all of them radiating that particular confidence that comes from never having been told no. My father sat near the head of the table, my brother beside him. They were laughing at something, probably congratulating themselves on the military contract they thought was a done deal. Then they looked up and saw us entering, saw me in my uniform, and the laughter died. The confusion on their faces was almost comical. My father's mouth actually fell open. Michael went pale. The rest of the board looked between us, trying to understand the connection. Robert Morrison stood up slowly, as if his legs were not quite working properly. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" Before I could answer, General Vance stepped forward, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "Ladies and gentlemen of the board, thank you for agreeing to this emergency meeting. I am General Douglas Vance, Commander of Air Force Cyber Command. I am here to discuss some serious security concerns regarding your company's handling of classified government contracts." He gestured toward me. "This is Colonel Athena Thorne, Commander of Cyber Warfare Operations and the officer who led the investigation into Anderson Global's vulnerabilities. Colonel Thorne will be presenting our findings." The room erupted in murmurs. My father looked like he had been struck by lightning. Michael was gripping the edge of the table so hard his knuckles had turned white. I moved to the head of the table and connected my laptop to the presentation system. The screen behind me lit up with the Anderson Global logo, and then transitioned to a complex network diagram covered in red warning markers. When I spoke, my voice was clear and professional, betraying none of the satisfaction I felt. Over the past 6 months, my team has conducted a comprehensive security assessment of Anderson Global's networks and systems. What we found is alarming and poses a significant threat to national security. I clicked to the next slide, showing a timeline of cyber attacks. Your company has been successfully penetrated by hostile foreign intelligence services no fewer than 47 times in the past year alone. Classified data from Department of Defense contracts has been exfiltrated, sensitive communications with government partners have been compromised, and your internal security measures have failed to detect any of this. One of the board members, a woman I recognized as the CFO, raised her hand. "How is this possible? We invest millions in cybersecurity." I looked directly at her. "You invest millions in outdated systems and overpriced consultants who tell you what you want to hear. You prioritize cost-cutting over actual security. You ignore warnings from your own IT staff when they contradict your assumptions about your invulnerability." My father finally found his voice. "This is absurd. Sarah, you cannot come in here and make these accusations. This is my company." I turned to face him fully, and in that moment, I let him see exactly what I thought of him. "This is not your company, Mr. Morrison. You are an employee, and not a very effective one. Also, my name is Colonel Athena Thorne. I had it legally changed 5 years ago, but you never noticed because you were never actually interested in my life." The shock on his face was deeply gratifying. I clicked to the next slide before he could formulate a response. What appeared on screen made several board members gasp. It was an email thread between Michael and an overseas contact, discussing the relaxation of security protocols to speed up a contract delivery. The contact's email address had been traced back to a front company for a hostile foreign intelligence service. "Your executive vice president, Michael Morrison, authorized the bypass of security measures that allowed these intrusions to occur. Whether he did so knowingly or through gross negligence, the result is the same. Classified information was compromised, and Anderson Global is directly responsible." Michael shot to his feet. "You are lying. This is a setup. You are doing this because you are jealous of my success." I looked at him with the same expression I would give a particularly stupid cadet. "Jealous? Of what, exactly? Your nepotism-based position? Your inability to recognize a phishing attack that my first-year cadets could spot? Your contribution to what could be one of the worst security breaches in defense contractor history? General Vance stepped forward again. Mr. Morrison, I suggest you sit down and be quiet. You are in enough trouble as it is. Michael sat, but his face was crimson with rage and humiliation. My father looked between us, his world visibly crumbling. The other board members were frantically whispering to each other, and I could see several of them already calculating how to distance themselves from the Morrison men. I advanced to the final slide, which laid out our requirements in stark terms. Anderson Global has two options. Option 1. You immediately accept a complete cybersecurity overhaul under military supervision. This means my team will have full access to all systems, all personnel will undergo retraining, and significant infrastructure investments will be required. Additionally, those responsible for the security failures will be removed from their positions. I paused, letting that sink in. Option 2. We revoke your security clearances, cancel all existing government contracts, and blacklist Anderson Global from future federal work. Given that government contracts represent approximately 70% of your revenue, I believe the consequences of Option 2 are self-evident. The CEO, a gray-haired man named Patterson, cleared his throat. What exactly do you mean by removing those responsible? I looked directly at my father and brother. Robert Morrison and Michael Morrison will be terminated immediately. They will not be allowed access to any Anderson Global systems or facilities. They will sign comprehensive non-disclosure agreements and will be subject to ongoing monitoring to ensure they do not share any classified information they may have been exposed to. My father stood up again, his face purple with rage. You cannot do this! I have given 30 years to this company. You cannot destroy my career to satisfy some petty grudge. I met his fury with ice-cold calm. I am not destroying your career, Mr. Morrison. You did that yourself through incompetence and complacency. I am simply ensuring that your failures do not compromise national security any further. The fact that you are my father is irrelevant to this investigation. The fact that you spent my entire life dismissing my capabilities does not change the reality that I am now in a position to hold you accountable for yours. Eleanor Morrison's voice echoed in my head, her complaints about my little military tasks, my father's dismissals of my playing soldier, Michael's offer to get me work as an administrative assistant. Every snide comment, every condescending suggestion, every moment of being made to feel less than. General Vance addressed the board. You have 24 hours to make your decision and present a remediation plan. Colonel Thorne and her team will return tomorrow at 0900 hours to review your response. I strongly suggest you choose wisely. We gathered our materials and prepared to leave. As I passed my father's chair, he grabbed my arm. His voice was low, venomous. You are going to regret this. You are destroying this family. I looked down at his hand on my uniform and then back up at his face. I removed his grip with deliberate care. No, Dad. You destroyed this family years ago when you decided that love and respect were conditional on compliance with your narrow definition of success. I am just the first person who refused to let that define me. Michael made one last desperate attempt. The board will never agree to this. They will fight you. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. The board has already been briefed by their legal team about the consequences of fighting the Department of Defense on national security issues. They will make the smart choice, even if you would not have. As we walked out of the conference room, I heard the chaos erupting behind us. Raised voices, accusations, panic. General Vance smiled slightly as we entered the elevator. Well executed, Colonel. I doubt they have ever experienced a briefing quite like that. Amanda was grinning. Did you see their faces? Especially when you showed that email thread. Michael Morrison looked like he was going to faint. I allowed myself a small smile. The job is not done yet. We need to be ready for tomorrow when they present their remediation plan. But I knew the outcome was never really in doubt. Anderson Global would accept our terms because they had no choice. My father and brother would be terminated, their reputations shattered, their assumptions about their own importance permanently destroyed. Over the next few weeks, the situation played out exactly as I had predicted. The board accepted every one of our requirements. My father and brother were escorted from the building by security, their personal effects packed into boxes, their access badges deactivated. The humiliation was public and complete. My mother called me every day for a week, crying and pleading. How could you do this to your own family? How could you be so cruel? Do you have any idea what this has done to your father? To your brother? I listened to her messages but did not respond. What could I say? That they had done it to themselves? That years of dismissing me had consequences? That I had simply done my job, and if that job happened to reveal their inadequacies, that was not cruelty, that was reality. The professional consequences were severe. Robert Morrison, the man who had spent 3 decades building his reputation in the defense industry, was now unemployable in that sector. No company would touch someone who had been fired for security failures. Michael faced similar prospects. His fast-track career derailed permanently, but the personal consequences, I suspect, hurt them even more. The social circle that had celebrated Michael's promotion now avoided the family. The country club where my parents had spent every weekend suddenly became an uncomfortable place, full of people who had heard about the scandal. The Morrison name, which they had valued above everything, became associated with failure and humiliation. 3 months after the Anderson Global meeting, I stood in the Pentagon briefing theater and received a promotion to brigadier general. At 40 years old, I was one of the youngest generals in Air Force history. The ceremony was attended by members of Congress, senior military leadership, and defense officials from across the government. My family was there too. They sat in the back row, looking diminished and out of place among the sea of uniforms and power players. My mother had clearly been crying. My father stared straight ahead with a blank expression. Michael would not meet my eyes. After the ceremony, there was a reception in one of the Pentagon's elegant function rooms. A reporter from Defense News approached me for an interview about my career trajectory. "General Thorne, you have had a remarkable rise through the ranks. What do you attribute your success to?" I thought carefully about my answer, knowing that my family would hear this. I looked across the room to where they stood, isolated and uncomfortable. 5 years ago, at a family dinner, I was told that I was wasting my potential. That my choice to serve in the military was foolish, that I would never amount to anything without the right connections and the right career path. Today, I stand here not to prove them wrong, but to prove myself right. The path they did not approve of, the choices they mocked, those led me to places none of them could ever reach. I paused, choosing my next words carefully. Success is not about following someone else's script for your life. It is about understanding your own strengths, pursuing your own values, and having the courage to be excellent in whatever field you choose. I chose to serve my country. I chose to protect Americans from threats they will never know existed, and I chose to hold people accountable when they fail in their duties, regardless of who they are. The reporter was scribbling notes furiously. "That is quite powerful. Do you have any regrets about the path you have taken?" I looked at the general's star on my uniform, thinking about all the operations I had led, all the threats I had neutralized, all the people who were alive today because of work my team had done. I thought about the respect I had earned from my peers, the authority I wielded, the difference I made. No regrets at all. I am exactly where I am supposed to be. Later that evening, I stood at the window of my Pentagon office, looking out at the Washington Monument illuminated against the night sky. My phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. "Congratulations, General. You earned every bit of this." I smiled and put the phone away. My old family, the Morrisons, had been built on a foundation of appearances and illusions, of valuing titles over character and wealth over worth. That family had never been able to see me for who I really was. But I had built a new family. Amanda and the brilliant officers who made up my team. General Vance, who had mentored me and believed in my capabilities. The military community that had given me purpose and belonging. These were the people who mattered, who saw past gender and age to recognize excellence. The Morrison name, which my father had tried to force me to uphold through corporate conformity, had indeed become a symbol, but not the symbol he had wanted. Through me, through Athena Thorne, who had once been Sarah Morrison, it became a symbol of resilience, of refusing to be diminished, of rising from the ashes of contempt to achieve something genuine and meaningful. I thought about that dinner, about my father's dismissal, and my brother's condescension, and my mother's pity. I thought about all the years of feeling like I was not enough, like I had disappointed them, like I owed them something I could never repay. And then I thought about the look on their faces in that Anderson Global conference room when they finally understood what I had become. When they realized that the daughter they had written off as a failure held their professional lives in her hands. When they learned that real power had nothing to do with corner offices and everything to do with competence, dedication, and the courage to serve something larger than yourself. I did not hate them. Hatred would have meant they still had power over my emotions. Instead, I felt a distant sadness for what might have been if they had been different people. If they had valued me for who I was instead of resenting me for who I was not. But mostly, I felt free. Free from their expectations and their disappointments. Free from the need to prove myself to people who would never appreciate the proof. Free to continue building a life and career that mattered, that made a difference, that was authentically mine. The office door opened, and General Vance stepped in. He looked at me standing by the window and nodded approvingly. "Admiring the view, General Thorne?" I turned to face him, seeing my reflection in the window behind me. A 1-star general in the United States Air Force, commander of critical operations, protector of national security. This was not who the Morrison family had wanted me to be, but it was exactly who I was meant to become. Just thinking about the journey, sir. About how sometimes the people who believe in us least end up being the ones who motivate us most. He understood immediately. He had been at that Anderson Global meeting. He had seen the whole ugly dynamic play out. Your family does not define you, General. Your service does. Your team does. The mission does. I know that now, sir. I think I have known it for a long time. But having them finally see it too, Having them understand that their approval was never necessary, that felt like closing a chapter. He smiled. And what does the next chapter look like? I thought about the operations we had planned, the threats we were monitoring, the constant evolving challenge of protecting America in an age of digital warfare. I thought about the young officers I was mentoring, helping them navigate careers in a field that was still learning to value diverse perspectives and unconventional paths. The next chapter looks like more of the same, sir. Doing the work that matters, with people who respect that work. Building something that lasts longer than any single career or reputation. After he left, I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. There was an email from my mother, another plea to reconcile, to forgive, to come back to the family. I read it once and then archived it without responding. There was nothing left to say to them. I had made my choices, and they had made theirs. They had chosen to value appearance over substance, conformity over authenticity, their comfort over my potential. I had chosen to become someone who mattered in ways they would never understand. And in the end, that was enough. More than enough. I pulled up the briefing materials for tomorrow's operations meeting and lost myself in the work. This was my life now, the life I had built despite every obstacle they had placed in my way. It was not the life they had wanted for me, but it was so much better than anything they could have imagined. The Morrison family wanted success measured in salary and status. I had found something infinitely more valuable: purpose, respect, and the unshakable knowledge that I was exactly who I was meant to be. They had dismissed me as nothing, as a disappointment, as a wasted potential. In doing so, they had freed me to become everything they were not: strong enough to stand alone, brave enough to choose differently, competent enough to excel in ways they could only pretend to understand. As I worked late into the night, I realized I was grateful to them in a strange way. Their contempt had forged my determination. Their dismissal had freed me from the burden of seeking their approval. Their certainty that I was wrong had made me absolutely certain I was right. And when I had walked into that conference room and shown them exactly what their little girl playing soldier had become, when I had held their careers in my hands and made them answer for their failures, that had not been revenge. It had been justice. It had been accountability. It had been the natural consequence of their own choices catching up with them. But most importantly, it had been proof. Proof that the path less approved can lead to places more extraordinary than those who walk conventional roads will ever reach. Proof that true power comes not from inherited privilege, but from earned excellence. Proof that the opinion of people who never really saw you never really mattered at all. I am General Athena Thorne. I am not who my family wanted me to be, and that is my greatest achievement.